Welcome back to Realist Revolution USA. This is the podcast for real patriots who care about real America. And this is part two, a continuation of our discussion with Kevin on the Marines. Let's pick up where we left off.
So I want to circle back, towards the beginning of our conversation. You were talking about being in charge of Marines, particularly in war zones. And that's a heavy weight to carry. You're talking about, people are following orders, and certainly, obviously, in a war zone, you can't put emotion into following orders or delaying tactical missions. And you touched on in leadership, you need to have empathy. And do you think, I know lots of soldiers are good at compartmentalizing emotions. Do you think that ability to compartmentalize, is a requirement of being a good leader in the military? Having that empathy, understanding, you're in charge of these guys and
You
they've got feelings, obviously, on their own level. They're there either to fight, just to provide for their family, whatever it may be. Do you think being in leadership, especially in the Marines, when you're dealing with war fighters, that being able to compartmentalize is important?
Kinda, sorta, but at the same time, remember I talked about the number one requirement for a leader, in my opinion, is trust, right? Trust comes from character. Character is who you are when no one's looking. Yeah, I think you gotta compartmentalize certain things, always, right? Emotions. I mean, look at the environments. People don't change environments, change people, adapt to the environment. But you have to remain who you are and be yourself. Here's why. I will do what you tell me to do because of the rank on your collar. Or I work for you and you're my manager. I'm going to do what you tell me to do because you give me a paycheck, right? I'm going to follow you if I trust you. Those are two different things. Okay? Those are two totally different things. You say bring up compartmentalize because you all brought up PTSD, right? Before you all
Well, that's
mentioned
kind
that.
of where I was
And
going to go. I know
yeah, well, just go there.
PTSD is a,
Yeah, PTSD is real.
yeah.
Um, but what's interesting about that is this PTSD, right? Post traumatic stress, just whatever. Okay. But post traumatic
Disorder?
stress,
Disorder.
it's a disorder, but I don't think it's a disorder. That's number one. Take the D out of there. We want to be politically correct. Take the D out of that PTSD. Why? Because it's natural. Um, but I would say when you say compartmentalize, I think you've got to be able to do that sort of. Um, when somebody you're responsible for is killed, and you don't want to show emotion, okay, you still got to maintain yourself. You got to be able to compartmentalize, and you put that as part of the job. Okay, that's tough. That sucks. You can grieve later. Like, here's what's tough. Like those in the military, and my favorite helicopter pilot, he knows more than anybody. His job is to go out and pick them up, and if they're wounded and if they don't make it, he doesn't know anybody. Those aren't his guys. He's the driver. But I know with us, if something happens to somebody, you may not be home for, have a memorial service 8 or 9 months later. When you get home, then you got to face the parents. Think about that one. And I say about post-traumatic stress is it's post, afterward. And I guess the key is, and I'm not going to call it as much about compartmentalizing. It's the trauma part. It's the traumatic part. What's the, your view of definition of traumatic is different than Macklin's and different than mine, and mine's different than yours. You know what I'm saying? I mean, that is literally, those are different views. So different levels. Never been shot before, blown up before, been in a car wreck, been an IED. By the way, seen a dead body. You know what I'm saying? I think the problem with PTSD, and I say the problem is, number one, take the D out. It's not a disorder. Okay. It's a condition. It's a symptom.
It's a human
Okay.
reaction.
Yeah. It's a human reaction. All right.
I love that.
And we
Yeah.
could fix that. Do you know why we don't have many PTSD issues on active duty? Remember, I'm only speaking about the Marine Corps because you're with your buddies, because you're with your people. Like, I feel sorry for one of the things I'm very fortunate. I'm thankful. And I'm really encouraged my kids. My kids are doing it. Do you know how many people out there are have never been on a team? Do you know how many people out there have never had shared misery with anybody? Like, I'll tell you right now, I know you weren't a big in sports, Kim, but correct me if I'm wrong. When you're in
Heck
high
yeah, I
school,
was.
summer band camp sucked.
Well, I
Did
played
it?
sports too. I
But yeah,
definitely been through.
but you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, yeah.
But shared misery. And shared misery, you know, PTSD happens when?
You're by yourself?
By yourself. And the thing is that and that's probably the biggest thing that I've seen with a lot of people is who can you talk you know, are you gonna judge me? You know? I meet you, I get out, I'm young Trimble here, got out, I did Fallujah in Afghanistan. I come out and I'm back in wherever, and I meet Macklin, and Macklin, "What'd you do?" "I was a Marine." And Macklin's like, "Marines are crazy. I heard Marines are this or that." And they're like, "No. Did you kill anybody? Would you kill an American? Would you do this? Blah, 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 blah." And now it's like, wait, where's my buddies? You see what I mean?
Mhm.
And it's not back to recognize complexity, seek simplicity, right? People, men and women that go through trauma, where were they when they went through it? Okay. I can't speak outside the military, but I think it's might be similar. But if they weren't with people, like I said, being alone is like the biggest, you know, people need to reach out to other people and not judge, be open minded, be empathetic, not sympathetic. That's a problem. Too many people say, "Oh, I feel sorry for him." That's sympathy. Nope, we don't. Um, but the key is when you talk about PTS is that's as natural as can be. Now here's on top of it. You ever heard the stories about your grandpa, your grandpa, my grandpa, blah blah blah? They never talked about. Never knew it. Papa did. He never talked about it.
Sure.
They drank a lot, but the you know, the thing is now people want to talk about it, but they can't talk. How crazy is that?
What do you mean by that? They
Yeah.
want to, but they can't now.
So I come back from Fallujah and I settle in Illinois and I'm working and Macklin works down the street from me or near me and you haven't been through what I'm been through. I'm not talking to you about it. You know what I mean? I mean, really think about that. And it's weird because a lot of those old guys, they didn't talk about it at all, but I want to talk about it. Now, the reason is because if you look at the environment in the last 8, 9, 10 years, I'm afraid you might judge me if I really don't know you. What
Fair.
bond do we have? Shared misery, and misery is a different level now for everybody, right? So what's hard for you, you know, I'm not going to ask, but what's the hardest thing you've ever done in your life, physically, mentally, that just wore you out? I'm pretty sure it's different than mine. It might be different than Kim's, but the key is reach out to people, be open minded, be a good listener. And all these opinions on, oh, this person's like that, so they think that. Well, the news told me this. So, okay, did you go there? Well, no, but whatever.
See,
You,
I
you know what I'm
think
saying?
I kind of look at it the opposite, where you're saying, well, people don't want to talk about it. But I think people should just talk about it. Like,
No, but I'm saying
regardless of,
I'd say people want to talk about it. They do want to talk about it. But I think there's a condition of people finding the right people to talk about it too.
sure. But
I mean, think about
I feel like too, though, like the military specifically, right, is a very small subset of the population. People who have actually served in the military, right? And statistically speaking, people who enlist in the military more than likely have a military family member. So I feel like it's important for people, especially, the Marines, Navy, whoever. I think it's important that people talk to people who may not understand it because how else are people going to learn to be open to that?
well, and
You got to
I
talk to
agree with you.
people.
I agree with you 100% there. All I was saying was there has to be a perception. Take the D out of it, right? Because right now, disorder. If I don't know you, you may be just want to listen. Hey, tell me about what you did, where you from. Okay. But if any shape or form PTSD comes up, unless we know each other, I'm probably not talking to you. Now, if I do get to know you, I would love to talk to you about it, right? All you got to do is listen. But I think the number one thing is talk to everybody else and say, don't say D anymore. There's no
I love
That's
dis-
that.
that's a
Yeah.
fantastic point. Yeah, I never thought about that. And to your point also, Kevin, you were alluding to different ways you can experience PTSD. So you don't have to be in the military or be deployed to experience it. A car accident can give anyone PTSD.
uh,
It should give anyone
I was
PTSD because
shocked.
we're human
I'm going to give
beings.
you a stat. This will shock you. I had a friend and they were this commanding general boot camp. It said they did a survey. They do some surveys or something. It's a couple years ago. And oh, by the way, there's a really good chance they're not lying. Recruits are not going to lie. They're going to on a survey. They'll, or they'll fill out whatever, right? Because the Marine Corps does it right. But here's this interesting. This will blow your mind. 85% at one time, one class recruits that went. And right now, on average, it's about 70 to 80. Have never been in a fight. Have never been punched in the face and tasted their own blood. Here's what's crazy about that. You and I could walk around campus. I bet 70% of campus never been hit in the face. And I'm not saying that's a badge of honor, but if you get in a fight and you punch somebody in the nose for the first time in their life, okay, there's probably some PTS going to happen. I mean, really, I know this sounds crazy, but it's understanding what you brought up. It's not because you're in the military. Oh, don't give me a bullshit about PTSD just because you're in combat. It's understanding and recognizing that. Now, I also think this is where, from a leadership perspective, sympathy and empathy get very much confused. You start feeling sorry for somebody like that, what are they going to do?
Become dependent.
I'm your dog at your house and you don't feed me for a week, but the neighbors start feeding me. What's going to happen? Go to the neighbor's house. That's where the whole empathy comes in. What do we look for here? I think most people just want to be heard and listen and be like, dude, it's all right, good. Whatever you need, here's a hug. We don't do that enough anymore. How come?
Exactly what you were saying before. People are scared that other people are,
Yeah.
not like them.
Yeah, I give you a hug, you're going to turn me into HR. Okay. You all think I'm joking. How can we get through that? By the way, there's people that have PTS from the workplace, do you know how many kids have never been told, honey, you suck. You're terrible. I'm just telling you right now, you're not good.
Not enough.
Yeah, they've never been humiliated. I know the Marine Corps uses that, uses humiliation as a training tool, and it's the greatest thing ever. Makes warriors, makes just,
great.
in entry level. So, but at the same time, when you talk about PTS, you talk about that type of stuff, take the D out, number one, and empathy. Just kind of don't let them use it as a crutch. That's probably what we don't do enough of. You know what I mean? All right, what else? Come on.
I've got a couple more. I kind of want to get to the lifestyle of the Marines, in general, the military. So PCSing, permanent change station, happens every few years.
Jennifer's at work. She's the pro. We've done it 11 times.
Oh my gosh. So you had the opportunity to serve overseas. And can you tell us, what was it like to live abroad while you were serving? Can you share? I know you said you've stopped at many ports and stuff, but can you share some of the other places you've been and things you've gotten to see just because of your
I would
service?
say I've been all over the world. Pre 9/11, got to travel all over the world. Got to go to Australia, been to Thailand, do some really neat stuff. Trained with foreign troops, which I love. Back to having an open mind, how people think. And then 9/11 happened, which was really interesting because I did my first infantry deployments, like I said, going to the Middle East, going to Liberty ports in Asia and Australia, doing all that. And then went on recruiting duty. I did all those in the 90s. And then obviously 9/11, 2001. From then, I did 3 deployments between 2001 and January 2005. What was interesting, though, was number one, just you think you know, but until you get there, you don't know. You know what I'm saying? You really, I know all about this. I've read about this because, you had asked one time about regrets. I wish I would have read more earlier, like as a lieutenant and a junior captain. One of the things we have a rule for every hour that you PT and work out, you should be reading as well. Be a student of your profession, regardless of what you do. But I wish I'd have done that more. And I really figured out the culture thing. That's probably the biggest thing. But travel the world, you say PCS moves. So with the family, we've been, Jennifer and I met on recruiting duty. I went to North Carolina. She was still West Virginia. And then 9/11 happened. I went and deployed and came back after the first time, and we got married, and then went 2 more times. We did 3 deployments in our first 18 months of marriage, right? So, but what's interesting about moving is sharing that together. It was adventurous, especially when you don't have kids.
Mhm.
Got to go teach for a while, but then we had our first kid. Here's a crazy one. So I'm in grad school. Got to go to grad school 3 times, but first 2 were back to back. So I got 2 master's degrees out of this deal. But the key to get the second one, you have to agree to a payback tour, and that
Uh-huh.
means anywhere. And so we had been in Virginia for 4 years, longest we ever stayed. I got to teach for 3 years. Probably, other than leading Marines and being in command, that's my favorite job, was teaching. But then I got to go to grad school, Command and Staff College. And then they had this other school called SAL, kind of a special. Each of the services have one, so you become like a operational planner. And what that does is you are the payback. It's a master's degree. The payback is go work on a minimum of a 3-star staff. Right. So you're like a Jedi Knight. So like the Marine Corps school only had 18 slots in their school, and going to be X amount of Marines, X Army, some other services, and a couple, foreign officers, right, in the school. But like I said, it's a payback, and I didn't want to go. I'm not a big I'd never been a school guy, and I didn't figure it out till about that first year. But in the first year of grad school, my best friend that I became one of my best was an Australian commando. By the way, one of the smartest guys ever, probably the closest thing to Rambo I've ever met. Like, how you always think
Yeah,
about
yeah.
special forces and like
Mhm.
that guy. But here's the deal, right? When I say, like, I know for a fact the deadliest badass dude I've ever met, right? But if he walked into the room, you'd be like, who let Harry Potter in? Dude, I'm not joking.
That's awesome.
5'9", 5'9", 140 pound. And here's what happened. So we're at the command and staff, and he's like, "Is that spring?" And uh, he's like, "Man, you need to apply for this next school." I was like, "Dude, I'm not going to get in. There's no way. They're only taking 18." I was like, he's like, "No, I think you will. You will." I was like, "Dude," he goes, "Jennifer would like it. Another year at our house." Mason was born, the year prior. Um, I was like, "Yeah, but it's payback." And I'm just making all these excuses. And he's like, "Dude, just apply." I was like, "I'll apply." I said, "Dude, I'm here right now. I'm so confident I won't get in. If I get in, I'll run the Marine Corps marathon with you." Story short, I got in. So I did run the marathon. But here's the crazy part. In the military, most of your orders come after Christmas, right? Where
Mhm.
you're going to go in the summer. This school, like I said, we're in our house in Fredericksburg. This is fall of 2009. Base is 2.5. Jennifer's at home, and I remember coming home in September. We don't even graduate till June, May or June. I said, "Man, we got orders. Where are we going?" You ought to sit down for this one. And remember, her mom and grandma and family lived 5 hours away. I was like, "We're going to Okinawa." Oh my God. It was rough. It was so then we had that was in September. So it wasn't like we had to hurry up. I mean, so anyway, we went to Okinawa. By the way, she's pregnant this time. So she landed 6 months pregnant, and we were there a month. And the command list came out to who got to be commanders. I was on it. We're going back to Camp Lejeune. So we weren't there but a year, and then did that. The neat thing is we are still friends. That whether it's Christmas card and talk on the phone with at least somebody non-Marine from every place we've ever lived.
That's cool.
I've lived in California, Ohio, West Virginia, Jennifer and I, Virginia, North Carolina, Alabama, Okinawa, Tampa, and Louisville, and North Carolina as well. But we stayed in France, and that's what was great there. And then obviously travel overseas. I couldn't bring her with me when I deployed, but you know,
There's difficulties to it's definitely a lifestyle. I mean, you talk to like a civilian and the idea of generally speaking, knowing that you're going to be moving every few years it's not quote unquote normal, right? So there's a difficulty to that type of lifestyle. But as you're alluding to, you go somewhere and everybody's in the same position. So you make these connections with people and they are lasting. But there's certainly difficulties to it too, like the logistics of packing up and moving. And it's, is there
Well, the
anything
best
that pops
part
into your mind, like,
well, yeah. Well, the
difficulties and
best
stuff
part
specifically?
well, there's tons of difficulties. The best part for us is we're Marines, right? The Marine Corps is so small. You'll like this one. First of all, we have to put half of our earthly more, three-quarters of our earthly when we moved from Virginia to Okinawa, three-quarters of our earthly belongings go in permanent storage, go in storage. So it takes 2 weeks, 3 weeks to get our other stuff to get base housing. And by the way, we live in a typhoon-proof concrete cinder block house on Kadena Air Force Base. Why? Because if a typhoon's coming, you can't leave. Where are you going? You got to suck it up. Anyway, so we moved like a year later. Not even that. Go to Camp Lejeune. Well, our stuff is on a ship. So who knows? Our stuff's in South Carolina, wherever. And I'll never forget, we flew this neat family vacation. Marshall's 6 months old. We went from Okinawa to Tokyo, Tokyo to Hawaii, spent like a week in Hawaii. Had to put the dog in quarantine. And then we went to South Carolina because her brother lived there. But when you store your vehicles, you have to pick where you store it. We'd pick that and we figured, hey, we'd fly there. So I got my vehicle. But the thing is we go to Camp Lejeune. We got a hotel. We don't have a house yet. We're still waiting. We don't have any stuff. And I'm going to take command. And they're having there's a formal dinner. And somebody goes, hey, we want you to come. And I had my ribbons and stuff, but I didn't have blues. But here's what's so funny. And I'll bring this story up because this is probably I'm sure a lot of Marines have the same story, is a guy that I've known since high school who went in the Marine Corps too, was stationed at Camp Lejeune. He was in Afghanistan at the time, same size as me. Jennifer and I, they lived behind us when we got married at Camp, so now we were young captains, now we're old lieutenant colonels, right? And so we called her, he and I are emailing, he's in Afghanistan. I finally got there. I was like, dude, do you by any chance have you dress blues? Because I got to go on this deal. They want me to go on this thing. Oh, matter packed and blah, blah, blah.
Right.
He goes, yeah, I just emailed Shannon. She'll have them all waiting on you.
I love this story because I'm thinking about people coming to our house who are like, oh, I forgot my uniform. Just completely forgot the uniform. Could I borrow
Yeah.
one of yours? It's like,
Well,
sure.
and it's
Yeah.
funny how that works. And
Mhm.
and to me, it's the things you remember aren't like the big there's more to here's the end of this story, which is so funny about it, is number one, you're like, wow, this is how the Marine Corps works. You know everybody. But what's funny about that is I've known this guy since high school. He went to a rival high school, and in high school we wrestled. I wrestled. My team was awesome all year, and we choked at the state tournament. Just bottom line. His team won state. He wasn't even wrestling on the team. He was like backup, but still, his team won state. Right? This is 2012, so it's 23 years after the fact. Right? So I get to his house. Wife said, "Oh, I put the blues down there. You can have those, and the jewelry box is over there." Frank said you could open that up if you need anything. And I know he did it on purpose because he told her from Afghanistan. So I opened up the joy box. Guess what's sitting on top? His
What's
state
the ring?
championship ring. That what he should have had. And I just, back to when I talked about, you heard me say what I learned in the Marine Corps. Don't have thin skin. If you've got thin skin, you're not going to last long in anything. You're going to make everybody else uncomfortable. But the thing is what's so hard right now is character is who you are when no one's looking. And the best way to shape your character is have shared misery with others. And a guy like him, I've known my whole life. You know what I mean? I knew him in high school. But we've traveled all over. We've met friends everywhere. Grad school, we got to go toured every battlefield in Europe and Asia. At one point, Jennifer went with me for a little bit.
That's cool.
That was awesome. My deployments, I've been to Afghanistan. I've been to North Africa, Pakistan, Afghanistan, all over the Middle East, done a lot of that. Cultures are very different. Understand it. You're not going to change it. The other thing that we've screwed up for the last 200 years, I can change your behavior with money and treasure, but I need about 5 generations to change your culture.
Yeah. Yep.
But like I said, I can change your behavior with money and treasure. Like I said,
Yeah.
I can change your behavior in a heartbeat with some money.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm not changing your culture.
No.
And understanding that culture probably might be been most valuable in my current life right now. It's validated that I was onto something as a young person. I was never a numbers guy. I wasn't a great writer, but I was always able to engage and understand and listen to people. I love people. And what was really interesting is understanding about cultures and trying to help Marines do that, trying to help, Marines from all over the country, even all over the world, but we get in a foreign place, we're different to them. We've got to accept that.
Yeah.
How,
That's
how do you,
huge.
oh my God, w- you know, I'm here in your country and I know, I used to deal with tribal sheriffs all the time. I will tell you right now, you asked if I have any regrets. Probably only got one. I was complicit, in my opinion, because you all heard about it. Uh, Imagine this. I was a firm believer by the time Afghanistan, I was in this area. I was going to tribal sheriffs all the time. It kind of made it clear, listen, I'm going to find out what's going on. And you know that I know. And I said, we can either fight or drink this tea and smoke your bad cigarettes or fight. What do you want to do? We'd figured it out. I'll never forget, I would get people dropped in on me all the time. Government agency representatives, that are for the good of the government. We're going to help these people. Well, kind of late, man. And
Hmm.
by the way, I'm in like southern Afghanistan. By this time, if you remember, all the money that went into it, Kabul's got dance clubs and skyscrapers by this time. Remember?
Yeah.
2012, yay. Uh, I'm in Pikeville, Kentucky, circa 1820. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm talking like they've had burkas, they never not had them. I'm in mud huts, I'm in tribal elders, Taliban, the whole deal. But I'll never forget this government person comes in and can I go to the Shura? Can I go to the Shura? Can I go yeah, you can go to the Shura. I've been there about 6, 7 months and I'll never forget. We've got a big announcement. What's that? By the way, I'm in Helmand Province. Okay. I'm in the land that God forgot. Okay. It is what it is. By the way, you're not changing these people. They're the helm of the past too. It is what it is. And this person from our government who got dropped in on me says, can I talk now? Can I talk now? I've got all the tribal elders. Of course, the guy in charge is the one who doesn't say anything, right? In the back. And I knew that. And he knew that I knew that he was probably the Taliban and all that stuff. And they said, okay, it's your turn. So through my interpreter says, I have a great announcement. You don't have to grow poppy anymore. We are going to give you corn and wheat seed. Looks at me and goes, interpreter looks at me and I'm like, go ahead, knock yourself out. Oh, like it is. And no, it's a really great program. It's an Afghan program with Kabul. Our American government is helping you, blah, 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 blah. So that way you don't have to plant any more poppy. We're going to wheat and corn. And we'll give you a good price on it. And blah, blah, all kind of shit. And I'm thinking, you're an idiot. And then they kept saying, no, it's a great program. It's an Afghan program. We're working with Kabul. So right then and there, this is August 2012. Guy in the back kind of coughs. And I knew who he was. And he says something. I think he was like the shadow governor of that district of the Taliban. But he's like a mullah. He doesn't say anything. When he coughed, like, I'm going to talk, everybody like, all the other dudes are, and I was like, all right, because they kept saying, oh, it's an Afghan program. It's from Kabul. By the way, Kabul's 400 miles away. Okay.
Yeah.
So this is like, and you'll get this because of where you live, kind of where you live. But I'm like, quit saying it's an Afghan program. You don't understand. Anyway, the guy in the back said, this is not an Afghan program. Those people up in Kabul, they're not from Afghanistan. They're from Kabul. And this government person with me was, and by the way, right when he said that, they go, they're not from Afghanistan, they're from Kabul. And I was like, I had a big light bulb just blew up in my head, like, oh my God, I get it now. So this person's freaking out, running. No, you don't understand. You don't like through the interpreter. I'm like, I had to pretty much drag them out of the freaking little hut we were in, like shut the hell up. And they go, what that makes no sense. Of course it's an Afghan program. It's from the capital. It's from Kabul. And I had to tell this person, I said, listen, when I was a freshman in college, I'm playing football and I'm right there on catching punts before the game. And the guy with me, he's from the Eastern Kentucky mountains. And we're talking and he's with me and we're just a couple freshmen out there. And I'll never forget, I said something about being from Kentucky. And this guy looked at me and he said, Kevin, I love you, but you ain't from Kentucky. You're from Louisville. And I said, I never got it until now. And the reason is you've heard where you stand is where you sit, right? Whatever you think of what you're seeing in the mirror, that's all well and good. But if it doesn't jive in any way with people outside that mirror, okay, if you're in a position of influence, don't think because you're in this culture that you know everything about that culture and that they think you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And it was so amazing, fast forward to, a couple months ago, I found out that, oh, we're selling corn seed to foreign countries for $1 gazillion. Really? Who gets the gazillion?
Mm,
Yeah. How
Mhm.
come I never got any of that?
yeah.
I felt bad that I almost influenced that. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Back to before you judge a culture, see a culture, at least immerse yourself in it as best you can. Be open minded. And I learned all that in the Marine Corps. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
everything I've learned, Zell Miller, former governor of Georgia, wrote a book. You ought to read it. It's not very big. It's called Everything I Learned in Life. Everything I Need to Know, I Learned in the Marine Corps. And it's really simple. And I think if more people can think like that, you asked me a question before, does Hollywood, the media view, give a accurate portrait of the Marine Corps especially? I don't think they do.
No.
No, because what do you think? I mean, when you think of Marines, Macklin, I mean, she's military. She's got an ID card. I don't know if you do, but when you think of Marines, what do you think?
Yeah, I think of a rigid, uniformed. I think of like I picture someone in their I don't know what you call it. I don't think they're the blues. They're like a black with like a red band and a sword at
Well,
their hip.
it'd be a black thing, but yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I think of the few of the proud. I think of Semper Fi, but I think of a rigid, no nonsense demeanor. That's the image that I have.
Here's what's funny. A lot of people think that that's what we may want you to think, but in reality, that's not the reality of it. And this is my opinion only. The neat thing, the most understood thing about the Marine Corps is you used the word rigid. And I use rigid as inflexible. Okay. Um, kind of definition. We joke around. You heard the term jarhead, called jarheads. Why? Because they can't, Marines can't think for themselves. They just put it in their head and screw it back on. Here's what's really interesting. Maybe when I was younger, I used to think that pre 9/11, 94, 95, 96, I'm a second lieutenant, junior captain, especially when I got to my first infantry unit. That to me was accurate. If you had a shaved head and you could yell and scream and cuss and, wow, that Sergeant Macklin sure is a good leader. He's a great leader. Remember, we were just training. We weren't shooting anybody. And it's easy to look good when no one's shooting at you, right? And you had asked me, Kim, about does the media portray the Marines? Like, I don't like how the movies do. Some do, some okay. But what was amazing, and I tell this people all the time, is pre 9/11, if you were a yeller screamer, and I'm talking boot camp. Boot camp, there's a purpose for that. But yeller screamer, rigid, they were stars. Do you know what happened when bullets started flying for real? What we discovered? Those people were liabilities, total idiots, total liabilities. Like most people will yell because they can't come up with a simple explanation or a command to communicate what they really want to happen. You know what I mean? You ever see the football coaches that just yell and scream?
Oh yeah.
Do you know why? Because they don't know anything else. They don't understand about developing. But what we found out, so our leaders, the leaders that to me that came from 9/11 up, the ones from the PFCs to became sergeants that were I had a sergeant, should have got a Navy Cross, got a Silver Star in Afghanistan, was in my unit, put him in for it. Saved his guys, killed a bunch of people, got in a grenade duel, unreal, right? If you guys met him, do you remember, he kind of reminds me of, he'd be Sergeant Jeff Spicoli. You know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
Fast
Yeah.
It's
Times at Ridgemont
yeah,
High.
he's
Yes.
not a shaved
Yeah.
head. What we're doing? No, he's like, I saw him at a wedding last year. He's like, "What's up, sir? What's going?" It's like, "What's going on?" I mean, that's how, and you will see the true leaders. Like I said, if I trust you, I'll follow you, and that's where I think that everything. We talk about PTS. PTS. Well, PTS. Um, Units military wide with good leadership have a lower occurrence of that. Okay. And good leadership is not yelling and screaming. Now, good leadership is you might have to yell and scream to get your point across to get people going. But when you talk about the portrayal of a Marine, I like to say most Marines that are rigid, some of them are, some that are inflexible. I also like to say jokingly, but this is kind of true. Marines all like have ADD. And the reason everybody wants to know why Marines always get it done. They always get it done. And I say because, you know what? The camaraderie of being a Marine, whether you're a Lance Corporal or a PFC or a Lieutenant Colonel. So if you get a room of Lance Corporals together, they're going to act like Lance Corporals, right? If you get a whole room of just Lieutenant Colonels together, they're going to act like Lance Corporals. It's like a frat almost. And what's interesting is you give us a mission, we're going to do it. We're going to do it. We're going to plan. We're going to execute it. We're going to do it. We're going to do it right. And we're going to do it quickly, get it done. So when we go back to screw it off. And that's literally, I know that's kind of a broad analogy, but that's one of the things I've stepped back. I look at hiring when I talk to people about jobs and second careers, and I always look for athletes and veterans particular. Now, if you were like in the Air Force and you were a data analytics rocket scientist, okay, you got to go do some data analytics rocket science shit. Go do that. But I literally I'm confident I could take a motor T Marine or an Army a squad leader, even a sergeant. To me, the most misunderstood part about people join the military and say, I want to go and learn a skill or a trade. Okay, that's fine. The number one skill in the world is leadership because you have to fail. Think about this. There's no job anywhere in the world. There's no title with leader in the title. So if you ever see a company or corporation and they have the term leader in the title, nope. Manager's a title, but leader has to be, leadership has to be earned. You know what I'm saying? You got to earn a leader because if I trust you, I'll follow you. And so anyway, I bring that up about the Marine Corps and the learned, character, empathy, open-mindedness, adaptability. People don't change, environments change. Successful people adapt to their environment. How many people do we have that are still stuck in 4 years ago?
40 years ago.
Yeah, 44, 10. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? That's kind of how that goes. But that's probably the best, to me, it was the greatest schoolyard. It was the greatest environment. I love the Marine Corps because it's small. Obviously, the Marine Corps can do what the Marine Corps does because it's small. The politics and all those types of things, whatever, when bullets are flying, that's when you find out who the leaders are. And yellers and screamers aren't leaders. They're liabilities. We saw that early on. They usually freak out. They're gone. They don't make it. They're out. And that's the tough part is that if the media and Hollywood really knew that, it would be boring. You know what I mean? It would be boring. So, what other questions do you have?
Got one. So there's a lot of feelings on this particular one. Do you feel that, and I don't know if you by chance had any experience with this or not, do you feel that gay people serving in the military is really an issue that's affecting any part of readiness? I mean, aside from, like you mentioned, is your medicine ready? Obviously that's not a thing that's gonna fly well, but just in general, gay people in the military, do you give a crap?
No problem.
And
No.
could I tack on trans people in the military because that's also a hot button issue that's come up recently. Do you have any thoughts on?
Well, I will tell you this. You say gay people. Here's what's funny. When I was in Afghanistan. I'll never forget this. I was in Afghanistan when President Obama changed Don't Ask, Don't Tell. Said, okay, I'll be in there, right? I'm in Afghanistan, right? What was really cool is I was like, dude, I'm cool.
Whatever.
But the young Marines were like, I got no problem with it, right? Well, I don't care. Well, don't have a problem with it, right? Now, the tough part was, fraternization rules still apply, right? It is what it is.
Just want to clarify for anybody who doesn't know. In the military, there are rules about fraternization. Like if you're in particular on a deployment, you're not supposed to be in a relationship with, people you're out there with type of a deal. So that's what that means. Just sorry to interrupt.
The other side, what you said, that is kind of complicated. I haven't had to experience that much except for back to what we said. What does that mean? And the reason I say that, you said the trans thing, okay? What does that mean? And I bring that up because my opinion, like I said, I haven't had to deal with it. The folks I've talked to that dealt with it, um, have you ever heard the term? It's called gender affirming care, but really it's like medication and blah, 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 blah. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, are you worldwide deployable if you have to have no? Probably the toughest part is, I would say, the biggest resistance. And like I said, I don't have a dog in the fight. Um, is remember, we're not an equal opportunity employer. Okay. The one thing is you cannot be different. If you think, oh, I'm gonna like, I don't know if you heard a lot of people have a problem with it. They talk about beards. Well, my culture lets me have a beard. So you should be able to let me have a beard, the Sikhs. Now I think there'll be a lawsuit on that, but uh sometimes they warn them. It's like, what are you doing? We don't have beards. You know what I mean? I mean, we don't do that. Now, special forces will, when they're going to work in a culture that has to, and they have to embed, but everybody else, we don't differ. We're uniform. We're not doing that. Just like we talk about standards, physical standards. That was, did you all watch the secretary's speech on that, on standards?
I did not
The
see
one
that.
where he gathered all the
General.
generals in that
Yeah.
room?
Did you
Okay.
see that?
Yeah.
Did you
I didn't
get
watch the
this?
whole speech, but I've seen segments.
Well, watch the whole speech. That's the other thing. Don't get snippets, because we could all get snippets. You know what I mean? You all can make snippets on this podcast and put it online, and next thing you know, I'm getting arrested by somebody. But I'm just telling you, watch that, because it talks about standards. Okay. And it talks about that. And this is a joke my wife always said, that if you want to get promoted from corporal to sergeant in the Marine Corps, you have a cutting score. And a cutting score is based on everything from your physical fitness test. We do twice a year, always do. Physical fitness, combat fitness test, your rifle range score, your shooting scores, MCIs, other stuff, and then obviously proficiency and conduct marks by your leaders. Well, the thing is if for me to get a first class PFT, I have to run 3 miles in 19 minutes and 30 seconds to get first class. And for me, a first class, let's call it 90 points, right? Let's just call it that. But Kim, you don't have to. You can run it in 23 minutes and get 95 points. Yeah, we're in the same office, in the same room, I mean, think about that, right? Is that how does that work? We have a friend, his name's Matt, and I'm just gonna use first name. He's been a friend like for years. We've been stationed together multiple times. Matt's about 6'4", tall guy. We retired about the same time. We talked about women in combat in different roles, right? And my wife, who's a college athlete, by the way, my wife is 6 foot tall, college volleyball player. My wife is very clear. She's like, I've heard her say it 100 times. She goes, if you can't carry Matt out of combat, you have no place there. Bottom line. You know what I mean? If you can't carry him out of combat, you should not be there. So I bring that up about, A, where the standards are, but B, where there's no room for difference. I mean, there's zero individuality in the military. I know, man, by the way, in the Marine Corps, I'm talking Army, who knows? You can wear all kind of good, who knows? But
Not
in
as
the
much
Marine
as you
Corps,
might think, Kevin.
yeah. But in the, and I'm joking with that.
Yeah.
But, well, I mean, and the thing is this, like, the Army is so big, like, you're very tied to the National Guard, right? Okay. Very tied to the National Guard in a certain segment of it, in a certain state, compared to the whole monster. The Marine Corps is so small, everybody knows everybody. It goes back to the why and the purpose. What is the purpose of the Marine Corps? Why do we have a Marine Corps? And that's the tough part, and I'm not going to speak for any other service, because for 50 years they've been doing, to me, there's things we're doing it for the right reason. But, crazy it took till 1947 to integrate the military. How nuts is that? Awful. Okay. Way too long. But when you talk about things where the purpose, what is the purpose? The purpose is you have to be worldwide deployable. And I'm talking about Marines on a moment's notice. There's no room for individuality. Like, for example, if you go to boot camp, ours is called boot camp. The Army's is called what?
Boot camp.
Basic training.
Basic training.
No, basic training. And when they graduate, they call them soldiers day one at Army basic training. Marines are recruits. Marine boot camp, the goal of boot camp that you are passing And same with officer candidate school. You want to earn the Eagle Globe and Anchor. So the Eagle Globe and Anchor is a symbol of the Marine Corps. Only then can you be called a Marine. Like the title Marine is it's sacrosanct, and there's a reason for that. There's no individuality. Okay. There's still, group mentality, whatever, but there's no, I'm doing this because I'm different. We don't do that.
Mhm.
And here's why. Because if you're like me and him, and you're not, there's no thought. There can never be a discussion of, hey, I'm going to go here, you go there, cover me. It needs to be like a link or a wink. There can never be any doubt at all. And I bring that up because that goes back to character. So, for example, one of the things I try to teach salespeople is about the most important thing about leadership is trust. But trust comes from character, who you are when no one's looking, right? Well, guess what? In the year of our Lord 2025, everybody's looking. Okay. So if you are different
Absolutely.
to me, if you're
For those
different,
listening and not watching, Kevin just held up a cell phone to remind us that we all have cameras on us at all
Yes.
times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's true.
And because if you were nice to me and then I saw you somewhere else and you're a jerk, or you're a snob or whatever, I'm not doing anything with you. And I teach people in business. Well, here's the thing. I don't have to like you, but if I know it's you, okay, if I know it's you, there's a really good chance I could trust you. If I know your strengths and weaknesses. Now, if you're some serial killer, crazy person and you judge people wrong way, but the number one thing is this, is if I had a boss before, and the reason I got this job, it was in the military, is he was kind of a gruff guy. He was hardcore, gruff guy. Well, here's the neat thing. I saw him in combat, by the way, most stressful environment ever. I saw him in peacetime. I've had beers with him. I've been around him, around his family. I've been around him, other people, right? He was the same guy. He was gruff to his family. I'm good with that. And I bring that up because there cannot be anybody in the military in an infantry unit that I'm this guy here, but now I'm this guy here. I'm different. Or I'm this gal here. Now I'm this gal here. I'm different. Cannot be that way. And the reason is because there's too much at stake. And remember, this is my opinion. There's too much at stake. Everybody's green. Wait, this one wants to be a different shade of green. Nope, doesn't work that way. Because here's the one thing I learned a long time ago in the Marine Corps, and it validated what I learned when I was in high school. I was very fortunate in high school. My high school was 50-50, black and white. My high school football team had, 35 guys, and it was about 30, 70, something like that. And I never forget, Coach Redmond changed my life. Well, other than my dad, most sport man in my life, he said, doesn't matter. You just got a red helmet, just like you bleed red, right? You got a red helmet. When the Marine Corps, you're green. Doesn't matter what's your nationality, what's your race, whatever, you're green. We're green Marines. And that needs to be like that. Okay. When people start doing, and this is just my opinion, Macklin. So, because of the mission, because of the straightforwardness of the mission, of, a moment's notice, it's gone. You want to kick in the door, that's who you're sending. They're out there right now waiting. That's what they do. They're the forward deployed. There's Marines forward deployed all over the world, just waiting for the call right now to go kick in a door somewhere if we got to do that. Oh, by the way, here comes a hurricane, here comes all this crap or disaster relief. They're the first ones there. They're going to be there. There cannot be any individuals. So that's my take on that.
That's fair.
I was curious, and I've been thinking about this for almost my whole life, my adult life anyway. And I've only ever gotten to ask this question to one person before, and that was Kim's husband. I'm curious to hear from you how you feel when a stranger says, thank you for your service.
I feel, number one, I feel grateful, and I'm thankful that there's people like that they would even think to say that. My response is very much like Chick-fil-A. I say, my pleasure. But if you ever get the chance, I'd like you to thank my wife because I volunteered. I volunteered for this. Thank her. I drug her all over the place, because here's the deal. When Marines got killed or wounded, I'm not facing the families and the wives back home. I'm there. She's dealing with that. Think about that one. Some crazy stuff. But no, I tell you, I think I feel great about it. Sometimes I say, "Hey, my pleasure." I feel bad sometimes almost because I was fortunate to spend 23 years. I call it's like Paul Hornung, former Heisman Trophy. Sometimes I steal his line. I've lived my life on scholarship. Okay. I got to do some really, really cool stuff. I've got to have some fun. But the people I got to be around some of the most unreal heroes, men and women that you've ever seen. And it's tough. We talk about PTS to come back into the real world and people aren't held to that standard. You know what I mean? People don't have thick skin, you know?
Mhm.
I mean, it's funny. Like Kim probably didn't tell you, I'm a towering 5'5" and a half, 3/4, something like that. And maybe that's why I like being a Marine. I like college football. Maybe it's what I've always wanted to,
Got a
you
chip
know,
on your
I
shoulder.
well, it's not as much a chip on my shoulder. It was just kind of like I can do this to prove it to myself, maybe a little bit, not as much to others. But I guess
And you saw Tom Cruise in Top Gun, and he's a short guy also, and
oh,
you were
yeah, yeah,
like,
he's
"That's."
yeah, I heard he's, like, shorter than me, but anyway, the one thing is, I wish more people could be miserable. I wish more people could get through something miserable, and I'm not saying they gotta get shot at or anything like that. Like, I wrestled in high school and wrestled a year in prep school, and I cut a lot of weight, you know? I can go 2 days I can go days without eating if I need to. I've done it and gone without sleep, uh, it's but it's amazing then you get around other people that, "I need sleep. We gotta have lunch. We've gotta" and you're like, "Oh, man." And so when people say, "Thank you for your service," I wanna say, "Thank you for being a good law-abiding taxpayer to let me do this," but I loved it. It was the greatest time, bad, worse, whatever, but I wouldn't change anything. I mean, would I change a couple things? Yeah. I think about the people more than the mission. I've been into combat to make politicians rich, and sometimes I feel that way. Is that the case? No. But kill some bad guys that are shooting at us? Yeah, I guess. But at the same time, I'd go back to be fortunate the people we were with, people I got to lead, the people that who inspired you. I almost feel sorry for people that never get that opportunity. If your circle if you can't call 1,000 people and they'll answer the phone, that's not good. You know what I mean? People should be able to do that.
I'm gonna say too, I think that's a common feeling across branches.
Oh, yeah.
It's really about the people. It's about your brothers and sisters in arms. I mean, you mentioned earlier, Kevin, that a lot of the people that you met in your travels, you may not have even been with them super long, but you keep in touch with them. Some of the most wonderful people and friends me and my family have made are due to our involvement with the military. And so and I mean, anybody that I know in the military, that is one of the reasons that they would tell you that they like their time is the people.
Well, it is. I mean, does everybody have the same experience? No. But like I said, I peaked at lieutenant colonel. I'm very comfortable saying that. Ask anybody I know, they'll be like, Trevor, why didn't
That's
you?
pretty high place to peak, so
Yeah, but a lot of people are like, why didn't you make colonel? It's like, dude, I peaked. I'm good. What do you take from it? Do you share it? And it's not, it's just being able to share with people. But the other side too is what I've learned, and I try to share that now. Like I said, I don't walk around like the only reason I have short hair now. It's not because I was a Marine. It's because if it gets longer, the gray comes out more. My wife doesn't like it like that. You know, I don't like have Marine Corps on my car. I'm not one of those rah rah. You know, I've trust me, it's a part of me, but it's the things that learn that you try to carry on. I teach a class with high school students now about networking. What's the importance of networking? Most of it came from, whole bunch of it came from the Marine Corps. I
yeah.
teach realtors about an ecosystem. Like your ultimate goal is to build an ecosystem around you. Okay, or you're part of an ecosystem. Where did I learn that? Well, I didn't know it then, but I started it as a kid because I got into people, places, and stories, right? But we had to go find people making IEDs and things like that. What we do? We're not going to go shoot the kid that's putting it in. That's not good. How do you follow that guy? Who's paying for it? Who's putting it together? Who's making it?
Mhm.
Who's doing all that? Well, there's an ecosystem. Well, what's the difference between that and sales? I learned that in the Marine Corps. I learned it on recruiting duty. Okay. How do you
Yep.
recruit in West Virginia is a whole lot different than recruiting well, you know what I mean? Yeah, who are you talking to? Where's that ecosystem? So those are the things I've learned. I think the biggest failure would be if I didn't carry on the things I've learned to utilize for positive effect. That would be a crime. That would be, if I sat here with just grumpy and, you know, how to go. Like I said, my job right now is I help Jennifer with real estate. I'm always in the job market. Everybody needs a speaker, a keynote speaker. I'm your guy. I'd love to help you. Talk about leadership. If you have a business that you need planning help, I'd love to help you because I learned that in the military. I learned it in the Marine Corps. Kid from Louisville, Kentucky, public high school. I've got 3 master's degrees now, all because of the Marine Corps. I'm the beneficiary of a lot of great people before, but during, and now I'm trying to pay it forward and do that.
That's great. So if anybody's
Awesome.
listening and keynote speaker, networking, I guess Marines too, you
Hey,
need
whatever
somebody
you
to
want.
talk,
Yeah, like I
let us
said,
know.
Heisman
We'll
Trophy
hook you up
winner,
with Kevin.
right?
yeah, whatever you need.
Kevin, I have one quick question because we got to wrap this up. This has been too awesome. But just for fun, because I know that there's one branch of the service that other soldiers tend to rag on because they have it so easy, quote unquote, or are so well taken care of.
The
Um,
Share Force?
just out of curiosity, do the Marines tend to rag on or make fun of like one or maybe two of the other branches in like a
Oh, of
similar
course. Well,
jesting way?
here's what's really cool is that we all rag on each other,
Yep.
okay? But like I said, I'm the first to say we're the greatest Army, Navy, and Air Force in the entire world, bar none. Now, sometimes I get worried technologically we might get passed up because of what we had talked about before. But here's what's really interesting. We make fun of each other. So, for example, like the Marine Corps we're under there's the Department of the Army, the Department of the Air Force, Department of the Navy. The Marine Corps is under the Department of the Navy. You know that, right?
I did not know that.
Yeah, we're the men's department too. But anyway, and then the Navy, obviously, remember Tom Cruise? You said Tom Cruise.
Well, yeah, that's why Tom Cruise, as a Navy
Huh?
lawyer, was involved in the Marine case at Guantanamo and A
Uh-huh.
Few Good
Yeah. But
Men.
don't you remember the
Ah,
line? Kiefer Sutherland? Don't you remember Kiefer Sutherland's cheesy line? Back to media movies depicting Marines,
Yeah.
Jack Nicholson and Kiefer Sutherland. Remember Kiefer Sutherland said, yeah, you Navy boys, whenever we gotta go fight, you give us a ride. Remember that?
Yep.
Okay. But yeah, we always make fun of. Now, I was very fortunate in that I went to schools and a lot of races with other service members and other countries. But Army, aren't ready to be Marines yet. That's what the Army stands for,
That's
right?
funny.
Navy, we call them squids. Everybody, they call us crayon eaters. It's the weirdest. They just think, jarheads, crayon
Yeah.
eaters. Air Force, we all call the Chair Force. But I will tell you this,
That's
it
the one.
also,
Yeah.
yeah, so we lived at Kadena Air Force Base. I went to school at Maxwell Air Force Base and I retired at MacDill Air Force Base. Okay. So I speak Air Force
Yeah.
and they're all great, but we all have fun making
Yeah.
fun of them.
They are.
Of course you do. But you almost got to be careful now. Like I said, we're in the world of thin skin, right? God forbid somebody, but yeah, we make fun of squids. Well, I'll be honest with you, jokingly, and there's a little reality to it. So the secretary's speech remember, I'm tired of fat generals.
Yeah. Yeah.
See the Marines going, I know he's talking to who here. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Got to do some more push-aways, push away from the table. But yeah, it was pretty funny. They
Yeah.
all love making fun of each other.
That's
I will say
awesome.
you've mentioned lawmakers getting rich in office, and you also love social media, Kevin. So I got to tell you that you might enjoy an Instagram account that I follow called Stalking the Capital. But stalking is spelled STOCK, as in the stocks they trade.
Is this the
And
guy that did is he the guy that started that, like tracking what they do?
Tracking
I don't know if he
trades.
started it, but he
Yeah.
just grades the financial integrity of everyone. It's like every day he releases a video grading the financial integrity of everyone in office, and it's pretty great. He leaves politics out of it. It's not what kind of a lawmaker they are. It's just all about what stocks do they own, what stocks do they trade, how much PAC money and corporate PAC money do they accept, and yeah, it's pretty excellent.
Oh, I'd like to see that.
So Just want to say thank you very much for your service, Kevin. And thank you, fellow realists, for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, want to check out others, go to our website, realistrevolutionusa.com. Check us out on YouTube. Give us a follow. We're on all the socials. Until next episode, keep it real.